the New York Knicks. In one way, it's a sad story because Julius Randle has been ruled out for the year. On the other hand, a lot of good things have happened with the Knicks. They have shed the loser of the East, the sad sack of the New York sports scene. Some things have been shed. Sean Fennessey is here. Howard Beck is here. Fennessey, where are you now mentally? Just walk us through what you're thinking. Where are you?
Well, I'm sure you invited me here to say, why can't we have nice things? New York is cursed. Why are we so screwed? And so I'm happy to say, why can't we have nice things? You know, why are we so screwed? I genuinely don't know. I mean, somebody reminded me of this in a New York sports text chain that I'm on, which you can imagine is one of the most cursed places
that's
imaginable.
That's going to be the saddest chain on the earth.
It's very painful.
Is there a psychiatrist on the chain?
Yeah. Is Dr. Melfi on that chain?
This is just a direct link to hell. It's like Satan is overseeing. He started the chat. And I don't know if it was Satan or someone else in the chat said, every time someone or something comes along in this sphere of fandom that we have, invariably it gets scuttled. You know, think of Aaron Rodgers going down 4 plays into the season. Think of Breece Hall the season before that for the Jets getting injured in the first 5 games of the year. You know, for the Knicks, it was this very obvious thing where we got this very little, very brief snapshot of what this team with Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Dante DiVincenzo could be. And we saw it for 3 games after the OG acquisition. And it kind of looked like maybe a championship contending team. And it's easy to say that because it's a small sample size. We don't really know what they were. But I remember I was watching the game when Randall got hurt and dislocated his shoulder. And you could tell immediately that it was a very bad injury. And it feels like something has been ripped away from us. And now all of a sudden we're in what if territory with the Knicks, which I guess is better than what never, right? It could be worse.
Well, you've had 7 postseason appearances since the 2000 finals, and you've made the second round twice. So even the hope, I guess, Howard, like the bet, if you're going to go spin it positive, glass half full, they made a lot of good moves that worked, right? DiVincenzo, good signing. Jalen Brunson, the best signing of the decade. Isaiah Hartenstein, probably the best bargain free agent signing of the last couple of years. I mean, they got him for under $10 million a year. The Josh Hart trade was good. The Anunoby trade on paper, we can talk about his health stuff in a little bit, but that was a good move. For the most part, it looks like a train heading in the right direction. They didn't panic. They didn't do the, oh my God, we're the Matt Ishbia new owner syndrome move. They still have all their picks. The Celtics were probably winning the East no matter what happened with the talent they have, unless somebody gets hurt in the Celtics. So this probably wasn't the year anyway, and they're still positioned for a whole bunch of good things. I would say this is positive. You're going to these games in New York. Does it feel positive there? What's the vibe?
Haven't been in a couple of weeks. We'll be heading there when we finish up here today to see them play the Kings. But listen, the vibes, and Sean can correct me from the Knicks fan perspective if I'm wrong. I think the vibes are still generally positive. And even the Randall news today, you kind of knew this was coming. Like, you could kind of see this coming. I don't know that anybody really expected he was going to be back. Will Anunoby be back for the playoffs? We'll see. But I think given everything that the Knicks as a franchise have been through and put themselves through, and that Knicks fans have been put through, I think you cannot look at this through any lens other than a positive one, because the injuries are the injuries. That's going to happen no matter what you do. I think as a baseline, anything that Knicks fans could truly ask for was just operate like a normal, competent team. And they've done that ever since Leon Rose took that job. And I will say outright, like, I was a bit skeptical, not because of anything to do with Leon, but just the fact that I'm always skeptical when someone comes in from the alternate route, right? No assistant GM, no basketball ops experience, period. But he hired a lot of really good people who did have a lot of front office experience. And they've just done the slow and steady thing, right? They've kept their picks. They've acquired picks. They haven't swung for the fences. They were in the Donovan Mitchell thing, but whatever. Either they pulled out or Utah pivoted, whatever it was. They didn't overpay to get Mitchell, which turns out to be the best move anyway, because he and Brunson, you and I think, agree on this, Bill. He and Brunson, I don't think were ever going to be a good pairing. And so they've kept their powder dry. The Anunoby trade was a great move. Knicks fans who are friends of mine, I was on text chains that day with people who were saying, like, they were heartbroken because they love Emmanuel Quickley and they still had hopes for Barrett. But Anunoby launches them to one of their best. Tommy Beer, who's here in town, writes for a number of outlets, noted this on Twitter earlier that the January 3-week stretch with Anunoby was the Knicks' best 3-week stretch since Linsanity.
Is that true?
I didn't look up the numbers. I think it was like 12-1 or something. But like arguably the most exciting and the most optimistic too since then. So I think, whatever happens in the playoffs, and granted, at a certain point there within the last couple of months, I think, again, friends of mine who are Knicks fans were seeing like, hey, if things break right, I think we could actually take the Celtics. And I was hearing this kind of chatter, like they were up for it. They were feeling
we
like
were a little concerned on the Celtics side too.
You were worried. I remember you saying it. Yeah.
It was the type of Miami Heat type of weird, gritty, tough team that I think would have given the Celtics problems.
Yeah. And now I don't think that that's in the cards for this postseason, but you got to take, it's easy for me to say as the non-fan, but you got to take the long view. And the long view should be they are in a really great position to, even if they just got healthy and re-sign OG Anunoby and just bring back the same group, they're going to feel like a year from now they've got that same puncher's chance against Boston or whoever. But in the meantime, they still have all those assets, all those extra draft picks, and just they're in a great position to make the next move when they get the opportunity to. And in this league, that's all you can ask because you don't know when the next guy is available or when you can get him. You just got to put yourself in a position where you have the assets to go get the guy if he's available.
Well, they're going to have Randle at 30.3 next year, coming off an injury, and then 32.4 player option, which I'm guessing like with how high the free agent cap space it, like next year might be his last year on this contract. So that part's interesting. And then Bogdanovich, who's, has just not been a great signing for them. I guess I should have been able to predict that Tibbs wouldn't totally love this guy because he's such a defense guy, but he has a team option at 19 next year. So they have some chips. Sean, if let's say they traded everything and they got Donovan Mitchell next year, are you excited about that? Or are you feeling like, oh my God, this is a classic mid-2000s Knicks move?
Oh, I don't think it would be that bad. I mean, I still think Donovan Mitchell's in his prime and is one of the most dynamic scorers in the NBA. And that stretch that the Cavs had earlier this year where he was carrying them was kind of amazing. He's also just a dyed-in-the-wool New York guy who's basically desperately wanted to be on the Knicks, and there's a homecoming thing that hopefully doesn't too closely mirror the Carmelo thing. I'm the biggest Carmelo hater skeptic around, and I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm also enticed by it. I just have the same concerns that I think any reasonable person does about putting Mitchell and Brunson in the same backcourt, and just feeling like even with a strategically aligned Tibbs defense, whether or not those two can survive together, and nobody wants to mess with Brunson. I mean, Brunson is already the most legendary and beloved Knick since Patrick Ewing. There's just no question about it. I mean, he is I genuinely think like a demigod to Knicks fans right now. I love watching him play. Everyone feels very emotionally connected to him. So the idea of like messing with that somehow, or they're like pairing him with someone who reveals more of his weaknesses or whatever that might lead to, makes you feel complicated. But they have to do something because the offense that they're missing without Randle is so apparent on a night-to-night basis. Dante DiVincenzo being their leading scorer in like 6 of their last 10 games. They're 16-14 since Randle got hurt. Like there's just no way around that. Like they are missing him. I have been flummoxed by Julius Randle since he got here. He's really hard to root for. He plays hard and he is obviously very gifted, but his energy and his meltdowns at the wrong times, especially at the close of games, drive fans nuts. But they're just missing something without him. So whether it's him coming back in full health or making some sort of move, I wonder if when you look at the core of the team now, and you're like, okay, so it's Brunson, DiVincenzo, Hart, Robinson, Hartenstein, Deuce McBride,
OG.
And OG. Let's say they extend OG. Can you get your head around Cat for Randle at that point? Like, can you, and picks? Like, does it actually make more sense? And then line those guys up. Because then all those guys are all 27, basically.
See,
everybody
I don't
on
think,
the team.
As much as I like Cat, I don't think Cat would be the guy. I just think Bridges is now sitting there from a Brooklyn standpoint, and the Villanova thing, there's been hints. Howard, you know this. Follow the smoke signals. Smoke signals start pumping up in the air. Like, what's that? Oh, I see a little circle. What is that? And, the Villanova thing, which I think all of these guys love, and he just feels like the last piece. And if you're Brooklyn, it doesn't make sense to keep him. It doesn't make sense to do whatever, I'm sure. Have you gone to more Nets games or Knicks games this year, Howard?
By far Nets games, because I'm right down the street from Barclays Center, so it's just easier to get
so
to.
I mean, is there a sadder atmosphere in the league right now than Nets games? It's the worst, right? They had no fans to begin with, and now everybody just goes to see the other team. The Nets don't like playing with each other. Bridges has been exposed as, oh, you know what? He's actually not the guy who averaged 26 a game the last 6 weeks of the season after the trade. Like, he's an awesome guy to have on your team in your top four, but he's not like a lead guy. So I just don't know why the Nets wouldn't cash that in. I actually think he's worth the most to the Knicks.
I'm trying to remember.
Howard, do you think that the Nets and Knicks would do a deal?
See, that's a really good question, Sean. And if I had thought ahead on this and done my homework, I would have Googled it. I think they last made a trade like 40 years ago.
Like Michael Ray Richardson for...
Yes.
That's why I asked. It never happens.
Yeah. It never happens. It would be weird. I don't think it's out of the question if... Listen, I think both of these front offices are pretty pragmatic. And it's not like these are like, dyed-in-the-wool Knicks and Nets people, right? Leon was a CAA agent for a zillion years, and Sean Marks is I still think of him as a Spurs guy, frankly. I don't know that they would have any like emotional or weird, awkward feelings about making a deal. I do wonder if the two owners might, Joe Tsai and James Dolan, who knows how to predict anything that James Dolan would think or feel. But I agree with you, Bill, on the broader premise anyway. And I think we discussed this when I was on back in January. We were doing some fake trade stuff, or maybe I texted it to you. I thought the Nets should have traded or were entertaining Mikal Bridges trades at the trade deadline.
Because we talked about it.
Yeah, he's mid prime or he's early prime, 27, 28 year range, right? By the time you're good again as the Nets, I know you want him there as the anchor to attract, whether it's Donovan Mitchell or somebody else who can be the main guy, and Bridges can go back to being that number 2 or number 3 guy. And he's a guy you want to play with. Great. That's great. The problem is you don't know when you're getting that guy. Maybe it happens this summer, but if it doesn't, how long are you holding on to him, waiting for that guy? And by that time, Bridges has burned a couple of years of his prime. And while I'm not projecting this onto him or expecting it or saying he should, we know how it is in today's NBA. You get somewhere for a while, especially if you're, all-star level or even a little tier below that as Bridges might be, you get understandably antsy and you say, guys, what are we doing? Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe it's time to deal me. And I think he's got 2 years left.
Kind of was sniffing that out this year a couple of times. He didn't fully say it, but it's a little like, what are we doing, guys? If I'm the Nets, you got Simmons next year as an expiring, so next year is screwed too. Could you talk yourself into overpaying for Mitchell if Mitchell's like, I want to be in New York so badly that I'll even play for the Nets?
And then a ton of draft capital.
Yeah, so you're trading all your draft capital, but now this is your team. Your team is Donovan Mitchell. Simmons probably has to be in that trade, and then Bridges. And, I still don't see where you are in the East. He's in a worse situation than he's in Cleveland. His teammates in Cleveland are much better than his teammates would be in Brooklyn. And if he feels like he can't go to the Knicks, then maybe that's when Miami becomes a possibility for him. See, when I think about the Knicks big picture, I think of Bridges and I think of Booker. And I know, Booker's never leaving Phoenix. I just don't believe people are in the same place ever in the NBA anymore. We've been burned so many different times. And if I'm the Knicks, who's going to be unhappy end of April? Because we have so many good teams now. There's going to be a couple teams that are just like, holy shit, we just lost in the first round in 5 games. Or, oh my God, we didn't even get out of the play-in. We just spent $250 million on our roster. And I think Phoenix is a good candidate for that. It already seems kind of unhappy when you watch them. Like, I thought that Phoenix-Cleveland game last night was like, it was like the unhappy All-Star game. At various times, I was worried about the state of mind of both teams. But, and then there's the Durant piece too, which we have to mention, Sean. You just have to. because he does that interview podcast with Rich Kleiman, which I thought was hilarious to do a podcast with your manager. But and he's like, I told you we should have done the Knicks, and Katie's like, I know, you were right. And I'm like, all right, so now the door is open now for the Knicks that they're just even talking about that. And I just wonder, like, if the Suns thing goes badly this year, did the Knicks come to the rescue?
That would be bittersweet for me because I loved Kevin Durant, watching Kevin Durant, and just my favorite scorer in the last 15 years in the NBA. And it was the same attitude that I had towards Aaron Rodgers. He was my favorite quarterback to watch and kind of like my ideal as a quarterback in many ways. Doesn't make mistakes, cannon arm, great improviser, cerebral.
Good podcast guest.
Absolutely. Both of those guys, great podcast. A lot of interesting ideas that they're sharing.
Thinker.
Complicated ideas. Yeah, absolutely. Not afraid to go against the grain.
Zags.
No, I mean,
Zags.
both of those guys are kind of dipshits. You know what I mean? Like, and they're both coming to us late in their careers. Like, what are we talking about? Like, what I want as a fan, and I think in some ways I feel this way about Jalen Brunson, and maybe I'll feel this way about Garrett Wilson. Maybe I'll feel this way about a handful of other people. I just want somebody who's 26 and the best player in the league one time in my life. Just one time. That would be amazing to have, to draft Kevin Durant. Not to get Kevin Durant when he's 37 on his whoops, I screwed up 4 years ago and went to Brooklyn contract and begging his way out of the Matt Ishbia, tire fire, owner's syndrome, Phoenix Suns. Like, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for the culture that Tibbs and Rose built, that Howard was talking about. I don't even know what is Durant searching for? Like a kind of vindication there? Like what could complicate his legacy even more than trying to make up for the mistake that he made by not coming in the first place, than coming late and then letting us down and it not working out? That's the only thing you could do that would make it worse for Knicks fans. So I don't know.
Well, Booker might actually be slightly more realistic if he decided he just didn't want to be there anymore, which we've seen over and over again in the NBA for the last 20 years. But he's got all the Kentucky ties and all the ties with Wes and those guys. And I think that's on the short list for them. That's the one they've been waiting for forever.
And he's what I'm talking about. He's 27. He's one of the 10 best players in the league. He's a dog. And he would be a megastar in New York.
Makes a little more sense with Brunson, right?
Yeah, he's bigger. He can defend wings. Like, there's more there that makes sense than Mitchell. I don't know, though. I don't. In what world are you trading Devin Booker? How can you trade? Like, he would have to
say, like, I want out. But that brings me to the point I had earlier, which is like, we're going to have some unhappiness in April. Like, this is just the way it's going to go. There's going to be 5 or 6 teams who are just at the crossroads, and players that are going, oh my God, I just wasted a year of my career and we won a playing game and then I lost in 5 in round 1. What's next? What are we going to do? How are we going to get better? And there's going to be no answers. The league's just really, really good. Howard, are you surprised that the Knicks are even in the position where they could potentially they can big game hunt again? Because this was so bad. Guys weren't even taking free agent meetings with this organization anymore. Like, did you ever feel like this was irretrievable if Dolan was the owner, or there was some path back?
I mean, there was certainly the case to be made that it might be irretrievable with Dolan as the owner, with all the missteps he's made privately, publicly, operationally, politically, all kinds of different things you could throw into that bucket. But I've also, been covering the league long enough to know that, like, nothing's permanent in this league, right? The Clippers were the laughing stock for most of our lives, right? And they're about to move into their own beautiful new building. They've got a great owner who's the richest owner in the NBA, maybe the richest owner in sports. And they're respectable.
They have James Harden. He's red hot right now. That's going great.
I mean, things happen, but listen, Bill, I think we would agree. If those guys all retired tomorrow, the difference is that by Kawhi and Paul George picking the Clippers and then Harden going Westbrook, whoever, it's changed the image of them. Like, if they have cap room tomorrow, guys are going to actually consider them. The best players will consider them in the way that they never would have during the entirety of the Donald Sterling era. So, things change quickly. I'm only surprised that the Knicks are in this position based on what I said earlier, which is that at the time that Leon Rose comes in with Worldwide West and everything else, it's like, what exactly are they doing here? Like, Dolan's always hiring the guy who he thinks, can somehow get him the stars immediately. And that hasn't even really happened. The one guy who's become the star is Jalen Brunson, who at the time they signed him, people thought was an overpay and now is a vast underpay.
Oh my God.
So it's the surprise in it is simply that they took a very unconventional road to get here. And the front office has operated in a way that I think most of their predecessors in New York have not. They've done the smart, pragmatic, methodical type of moves, smaller moves, singles and doubles, instead of it all being swing for the fences every time, instead of it being, let's go get Marbury, let's get Amari Stoudemire, let's get Carmelo and trade everything we've got to get him, and now hamstring the Carmelo era for the rest of time because we had no assets left to deal. They were always sending out everything they had to get somebody, and often the wrong guy at the wrong time. And that's what they have not done. Now they've been
patient. So now you have Sean dreaming about Booker and Towns. And one thing that happened that I talked about it a couple of times on my podcast during the offseason last year about the Giannis side of things and how one of the Bucks owners sold. And I just thought there was some things I just didn't like coming out of that situation.
Let's go, Bill. Let's do it. Come on. Come to New York, Giannis.
The more, no, because he locked into Milwaukee, at least for a little while. But the more I've heard afterwards, after the fact, I think the Bucks thought like he was going to ask for a trade. I really think that was in play before the season. And then when they did the Dame trade, and then all of a sudden Giannis came back in, I forget which one happened first, but there was a little stretch there where they were like, he's not going to opt in, and we're probably going to have to trade him or we're going to lose him for nothing. And I think the Knicks were sitting there for that.
Giannis gave 2 interviews last summer, one with the New York Times and one with a podcast whose name I apologize, I cannot remember, where he basically said, like, if we're not going to be able to compete for championships, then yeah, maybe I would go somewhere else. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he was laying the breadcrumbs. But I think in real life, I think the situation was way more advanced. And, and then whatever happened, they stayed. But even like the Griffin to Doc thing, I think they're always going to be concerned. He's just going to look up one day and be like, it's time. I've outgrown this place, which we've seen happen a lot in the NBA. So I wonder, like I do think the Knicks are hoarding their assets. They're waiting. I'm going to be really interested in the Anunoby contract, though, because I have it written down. Let's just say he's not Lou Gehrig from a durability standpoint. Last 4 years, 29 games missed, 34 games missed, 15 games missed. This year, 31 and counting. And I don't even know what's going on with that elbow and why it's not getting better. But I just don't know. There's always some wink stuff with this. How high does that contract go, Sean, before you start throwing up in a garbage can? Like 4 years, 120. Are you throwing up yet? Like 4 years, 140. Where are we going? 4 years, 160. Are you puking?
That would be not good. 4 years, 160 would be not good. I'm concerned. I mean, on the one hand, like he's going to be 27 this summer. When he played, he's like the ultimate Tibbs weapon. He's like the player that I imagine Tibbs has been dreaming of his entire career. Guy who can hit open threes and defend every position on the floor. And he completely unlocked their ability as, they lost, I think they went like 16-2 in January. They were remarkable. But if he has a chronic injury, that's the kind of move that can like literally derail a 5-year period for a team. I mean, if they're paying him for $40 million.
Go look at Ben Simmons.
Yeah. I mean, it can be a disastrous move. So I don't know. They have to just make sure that they have the right information about his health. Because, you'd imagine that if he was healthy enough to play right now, he'd be playing. I guess maybe you could make the case that they knew deep down that Randle was never coming back, so they're not trying to push it with OG, and that there's a quiet acceptance.
That's fair.
That this is not the year. And so let him heal fully before giving him that extension. I don't know. That's trying to psychologize the front office there. I am a little nervous about the contract, though. As well as also the weirdness of someone like OG making $10 or $15 million more a year than Jalen Brunson, which will get resolved in the next year or two when he gets extended. But that also is kind of strange for a guy who, OG is a 3. He's like a number 3 piece on a great team. Not a number 2, not a number 4. He's a 3. And
Howard,
$40 million is a lot for that.
If Brunson makes All-NBA, does he get what happens to his contract? I don't know the rule because he signed a couple years ago, but like for me, I've been tinkering with my All-NBA every week now we're still 7 games away. There's some things in flux, but I don't really see a scenario where he's not a second-team All-NBA guy for me now.
I think he's probably a lock, and listen, I have not done the exercise yet, Bill. You're ahead of me. I got to get my shit together. But like, it's hard to imagine that he's not going to make one of the All-NBA teams. And especially because we're in the first year of this whole 65 game rule, which is going to knock out a bunch of other guys.
Knocked out Mitchell already.
And we're in the first year of it being positionless too, which I know, Bill, you're still going to go. You've said you're going to go with positions, and I'm considering that myself too. I'm a little uncomfortable with it just being 1 through 15. But the thing about the 1 through 15 is, if you want to over-index forwards or bigs, you can, and that could come at the expense of some guards. Does that mean
true?
Somebody like Brunson falls off? So I don't know. I'm not saying he should.
He has to be in the. He has to be second on NBA.
He absolutely has to be. I don't know. I do not have my Bobby Marks hat on today. I do not know what that does to them on the Supermax.
Funny if Bobby just came barging into the pod out of nowhere. He just like a bat signal. Sean, what do you think the net rating is of the Hartenstein, Hart, Brunson, DiVincenzo, Deuce McBride lineup? If you had to guess,
you're gonna have to tell me.
It's plus 32.4 per 100 minutes. The Hart Foundation. That's what Waz was trying to get that going on the Ringer NBA show. The Hart Foundation, Hartenstein and
Josh Hart.
And Josh Hart.
To me, DiVincenzo's been the story. I mean, he's had multiple games now where he's made 8+ 3-pointers. There's something crazy going on right now.
Yeah, he was not this good on the Warriors last year, but
not even close. I mean, I think there's. I have heard some people say that there's some confusion around the success of this team because basically every player is having a career year, and if every player has a career year, do you want to overextend your excitement, or is it just that these guys have hit their prime and that this is who they are? You know, maybe Dante DiVincenzo is a 40% 3-point shooter who shoots 12 threes a game. Maybe that is his game now. I really don't know. It's impossible to tell though when Randle and OG don't play, because like, what actually are those other guys who were 25-minute a night guys who are now 35-minute a night guys? It's really hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
The analytics guys will tell you that 3-point shooting is one of those things where if you have suddenly a career, like there was, I hate to bring this up for Sean's sake, but like Raymond Felton and maybe J.R. Smith that same year, the 54-win season, like some guys had career years or like outstanding 3-month stretches. And the analytics guys will tell you like 3-point shooting, if you have like an outlier year, especially, you know, to the high end, way over your career average, that's probably the anomaly. It doesn't necessarily mean it takes a while to stabilize. And so it's not necessarily a permanent state of affairs. And so, yeah, I think there should be at least a little bit of concern about too many guys having career years. Is it that they're all hitting their prime at the same time? Is it they're playing with Jalen Brunson? Is it that it's just a chemistry thing? Is it just the universe, everything clicked into place? And if you overpay everyone and assume this is just going to keep climbing, that could be a little scary.
Can I give you what my biggest concern would be? Because we lived it in Boston with the Isaiah Thomas year. Russillo brought this up on Sunday's pod. Isaiah Thomas had a very similar year to what Brunson's doing this year, where he was just awesome and actually running a lot of the same offensive sets that the Celtics ran that year, that the Knicks are running this year, and just took a physical pounding night after night after night after night, and couldn't sustain it and got hurt. And when I watch Brunson, I think the thing that is one of the reasons I can't wait to put him on my second team is just the pounding he takes night after night. Fucking love that guy, man. He really leaves it all out, especially when they changed the rules in February. There were some guys like that it was just worse for. Like, it was bad for Curry. It was bad for Brunson. Some of these guys that you can really kind of rough up, especially the smaller guards. That guy keeps ticking. I thought that San Antonio game, what did he end up with? 61?
Yeah.
And he only had 6 free throws. And there was like 10 different times he went flying into something. But I think, but it's not surprising to me to hear that you think he's the most popular Knicks since Ewing.
But it speaks to like a challenge that team is having right now, because now 2 of their last 3 losses have come down to the last possession, and Brunson has taken the final shot in both games, and he's been unbelievable in both games. But he's freaking exhausted playing 44 minutes a game, and he's taking, off balance shots with not a lot of offensive help, missing guys. And what's he supposed to do? The Isaiah Thomas thing is a little scary to me, because Isaiah Thomas, like when you look back, basically had those 2 mega seasons with the Celtics where he was amazing. I don't think we're going to look back on Brunson as having these 2 incredible seasons with the Knicks and then breaking down. I guess it's possible. We have to account for it. They're built a little bit differently. And they play a little bit differently to me, Brunson
Yeah.
and Thomas. Thomas is a little bit more slight, I think, than Brunson
Well,
is.
Thomas he's probably 5'9".
Yeah.
He's
Brunson,
5'9". Yeah, Brunson's listed at 6'2", but his own teammates say he's closer to 6
feet.
I think.
Yeah.
Probably
But
so.
he felt a little bit like stiffer and sturdier to me too, Brunson.
Well, either way, Sean's back. I remember there was a time in the mid-2010s when he thought about giving up the NBA entirely.
I never in a million years would have thought, as Howard said, that it would have been Leon Rosen and Tibbs who would have gotten me back into. I was very dubious of the Tibbs hire. I was miserable when they failed to sign Durant. Miserable. That might have been my lowest because I thought that was their best chance to get that credibility back. And I was 100% wrong about that. They have done an amazing job rebuilding this team and never made a mistake. But now we're at this summer. This could be the time when you make the mistake. So I really hope they don't.
All right. Sean Fennessey. Can listen to him on The Big Picture and on the rewatchables every once in a while. And sometimes he goes on the New York podcast with John Jastrzemski. Usually unhappily.
Mets are 0-5.
We got to put you in
0-5.
That stuff. We got to put you in a situation when you're popping on sports podcasts in a happy mood.